To get the most out of your homegrown potato harvest, taking the steps towards proper curing and storage are key. Depending on the variety, some potatoes can be stored for up to 6 to 7 months, which is really nice to have fresh potatoes in the middle of winter. Now, the first step towards storage success is to choose a variety that's well known for its storage ability. And this is going to include varieties like German Butterball, Yukon Gold, Red Pontiac, and Russet Burbank, just to name a few. Now, to get maximum yields from your potato harvest, wait until the foliage is dying back prior to harvesting. This will give your potatoes the longest amount of time to grow to their full size in the ground. Ideally, you want to harvest in dry conditions. You'll want to avoid watering about 1 to 2 weeks prior to harvest. Rainfall obviously can't be avoided, but if you see rain in the forecast and you're getting close to harvest time, I'd recommend just going ahead and digging the spuds if you can. If not, just give it a couple days and let the ground dry out before you dig. Harvest the spuds carefully, trying really hard not to nick or pierce them with your spade or your pitchfork or whatever you're using to dig them. Now, I'm totally guilty of this. Every single time that I dig potatoes, I slice one in half or jab one with a tine of my fork, or multiple ones for that matter. And that's okay. You'll just want to be sure to set those spuds aside and use them first. After harvesting, you'll want to brush off any excess dirt from the potatoes, but do not rinse. The key here is to avoid any excess moisture. Now, I don't have the absolute ideal conditions to cure my potatoes, but this is what I do, and it seems to work pretty well for me. Now, to start the curing process, I lay all my potatoes out in a single layer. I prefer to use old window screens, and I just prop these up on sawhorses or old crates, and this helps to provide maximum air circulation and keep the potatoes up off the ground. Now, you want to cure your potatoes in a cool, protected space out of direct sunlight. And the point of the curing process is that you're going to allow the skins to dry out and any small nicks or cuts or punctures in the surface to heal over. This part is key if you are storing your potatoes. This whole process typically takes about 7 to 14 days. And the ideal climate is right around 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, with the humidity at about the 85 to 95% range. Now, this is not realistic for me, nor is it for many of you in a home setting. So I'm just doing this in my big pole barn. The humidity varies all over the place, the temperature varies all over the place, but it seems to get the job done well enough that these potatoes store a nice long time for me. Now, after the potatoes are thoroughly cured, I'm going to move them into long-term storage. Potatoes are best stored as close to 45 degrees Fahrenheit as possible. So in a home setting, you're probably looking at like an unheated garage, a basement, a root cellar if you're lucky enough to have one. I store mine in my basement. I'm guessing it stays closer to 65 down here than 45, but it's the best spot that I have for them. The other thing is, again, humidity. The higher the better. Commercial potato producers typically store their crops at levels as high as 95%. I don't know about you, but there is nowhere in my home that is 95% humidity, nor would I want it to be. But you definitely want to err on the side of more humid than less. In really dry conditions, for example, in the refrigerator where it's very, very dry, the potatoes would tend to shrivel up and get kind of nasty. The other key is that you want it to be dark. Any sunlight exposure is going to be detrimental to your stored potatoes, and that is because sunlight will prompt the production of chlorophyll, which is also often accompanied by a toxic alkaloid called solanine. And that's why you've probably heard the advice not to eat green potatoes. Now, a little bit of greening on the skin can be cut away. It doesn't cause a big issue, but to be safe, just avoid all sunlight exposure on your stored potatoes. Now, as far as what you store your potatoes in, your imagination is the limit. But what you want to aim for is something that, again, provides some air circulation, allows some humidity in, and allows your potatoes to breathe. My go-to is these black crates because they have plenty of holes for air circulation and they're just really convenient. But you can also use baskets or paper bags or plastic bags as long as they have holes punched in them. Now, a note on the plastic bags, if you are having a hard time keeping your potatoes from drying out, the plastic bags will help hold a little humidity in around the potatoes. So that's a good option if your house is really, really dry. And a final word on storage conditions. You may think, well, since potatoes have to be kept cool, I'll just stick them in the refrigerator. This is generally advised against, not only because, as I mentioned earlier, the refrigerator tends to be very low humidity, the potatoes dry up, get shrivelly, but also because when stored at temperatures lower than 45 degrees, the starches in the potatoes start to convert to sugars. So you have a process called sweetening that happens. Sometimes that's reversible, but when potatoes are held in very cold storage for an extended amount of time, it can really mess with the eating quality, and it will cause the potatoes to turn very dark when cooked. And you'll want to check your potatoes in storage periodically. You just want to get in there and look for signs of any decay or rot and get rid of those bad spuds right away so that you don't end up with a gross, rotten mess. And if you have any advice you can share about storing potatoes at home, be sure to drop a line in the comments below and let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.